Wagwan. Good morning, good night, welcome back. And if you're listening for the first time, I'm your host, Melanie Byfield, welcoming you to another episode of The Real Situation, where we give you a taste of Jamaican politics. I don't know about you, but I love Jamaica. And bingy-ling, lingy-lingy-ling, yeah man. The festival competition was great, right? Those tunes came in first and second, and yeah, they were my favourites too. There was an article actually in the Gleaner where they were talking about the guy who sang I Love Jamaica. His name is Melvin D. Burns Douglas. And he was basically saying about how he came to fully appreciate just how much he loved Jamaica. And he would be performing in front of, international audiences celebrating Jamaica. And then, really discovered like he had a longing for home, the people, the food, the sunshine. He said, we found Jamaican restaurants in Las Vegas, but the jerk chicken tasted different. The curry goat tasted different. Even the sun felt different, and we started to miss Jamaica. And we came up with the concept that, I don't know about you, but I love Jamaica. He went on to say that in order to enter the JCDC Festival Song Competition, he needed a song. And that's when he and his friends, Mark Anthony Reid and Dale Brown, linked up, and they all wrote I Love Jamaica. Each of them putting in what they best loved about the island. What do you love best about Jamaica? Me? Woolly. The island breeze, the beaches, food, language, music, the discipline. Like I said, woolly. Okay, so let's check out the real situation. As a reminder of what the road to being a republic is actually trying to achieve, Jamaica's head of state is still a British monarch, and the constitution is a colonial document, and the highest court of the land is the Privy Council in London. The reform taking place is attempting to accomplish one, removal of the British monarch as head of state, to be replaced with a Jamaican head of state, transforming Jamaica's system of governance from a constitutional monarchy to a constitutional republic. And two, the 1962 Order in Council, which is the constitution that was passed after independence in 1962, would be Jamaicanized into a constitution of Jamaica. Problem? Yeah. The Porsche park up. There's a big roadblock. Why? Because a next move was anticipated that would take Jamaica's highest court from the Privy Council in London to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And right now, there's no consensus on that happening. So, what is the Privy Council made up of? Well, the Privy Council is made up of justices of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, other law lords of appeal, senior judges from within the United Kingdom, privy councillors who are or have been judges of the Court of Appeal of England and Wales, the Inner House of the Court of Sessions in Scotland, or of the Court of Appeal in Northern Ireland, and judges of certain superior courts in Commonwealth nations who are appointed privy councillors for the purpose of sitting in the JCPC. A funny thing hit my mind the other day when Dion Jackson Miller was really critical of the argument for having a member of the diaspora sit on the Senate. She said words to the effect of, they don't live here. Why should we have people who don't live here making our laws? On that basis, Dion's supposed to be Jamaica's strongest and loudest advocate for moving Jamaica's apex court out of the hands of the Privy Council in London, who don't live here to the Caribbean Court of Justice in Trinidad, where not only do they hear cases in Jamaica, but it actually has 2 Jamaican justices, one of which is the president. I mean, you can tell that the president is a yard man, no. He did a keynote address at UWI in 2023, and he basically said, "Hey, big man, and a little dibby quote this, Well, actually, his actual words were, "The CCJ is not to be placed alongside any other court as a candidate for a dispassionate choice. The CCJ isn't foreign, nor is it some abstract idea. It's not a dream to be devoutly wished for. The CCJ is an actual reality. And it's not a reality imposed upon us by anyone. It's a reality of our own making, of our collective imagination, of our own resources. The CCJ is intricately interwoven into the fabric of Caribbean life and the Caribbean people." Ow. We spoke previously, right, about the case Nazar Mohammed and Azruddin Mohammed versus the Minister of Home and Home Affairs and others, which was appealed to the CCJ. So there's a judgment. I'm going to share basically the key parts of the news release by the CCJ, but I'm going to link the full news release to my podcast page. So the news release is: CCJ dismisses appeal, allows extradition proceedings to continue against Guyanese opposition leader and father. And it basically says the following. So on Wednesday, 29th of July 2026, the Caribbean Court of Justice dismissed an appeal brought by Mr. Azruddin Mohammed, leader of the opposition in Guyana, and his father, Mr. Nazar Mohammed, challenging the validity of an authority to proceed issued under Guyana's Fugitive Offenders Act in connection with a request by the United States of America for their extradition. The extradition request was received by the government of Guyana on 28th of October 2025. 2 days later, the Minister of Home Affairs issued an ATP, Authority to Proceed, which initiated the extradition process before the courts. The applicant subsequently sought judicial review of that decision, alleging that the ATP was invalid because it was tainted by actual or apparent bias arising from public statements made by senior government officials during the 2025 election campaign. They also contended that the minister had improperly consulted the Attorney General, who was likewise alleged to be biased. The High Court and the Court of Appeal dismissed the challenge. The applicants then sought special leave to appeal to the CCJ, which decided to hear the application for special leave and the substantive appeal at the same time. The court also granted an interim stay of the extradition proceedings pending determination of the appeal. At the CCJ, President Anderson and Justice Barrow, in a joint judgment, held that special leave should be granted. On the merits, they held that while the broad rule against bias can apply to a ministerial decision to issue an ATP, mere political bias would not invalidate its grant. They further found that the applicants failed to establish that the issuance of the ATP was tainted by bias in any relevant sense, and emphasized that an ATP is a preliminary administrative step in the extradition process. The minister's role is to engage in the decision-making process contemplated by the legislation. The applicants did not allege that the minister failed to consider relevant factors or had relied on irrelevant considerations. Instead, they relied solely on allegations of political bias. The judges found those allegations insufficient to invalidate the ATP. In separate reasons, Justice Rajnauth Lee, Jamadar and Balkan agreed that the appeal should be dismissed, but held that there was no legal bar preventing an early judicial review challenge to an ATP where bias is alleged. While finding no appearance of bias on the part of the minister, they concluded that there was a real possibility of apparent bias on the part of the Attorney General. Nevertheless, they determined that any such bias did not contaminate the minister's decision-making process or invalidate the ATP. In a further separate opinion, Justices Ononayu and Eboe Osuji agreed that the appeal should be dismissed. They stressed that allegations of bias must be assessed from the perspective of a fair-minded and informed observer who considers all the surrounding circumstances. On that test, bias is not made out in the particular circumstances of the present case. Ultimately, the CCJ unanimously agreed special leave to appeal, but dismissed the substantive appeal. It goes on to say the interim stay of extradition proceedings previously granted by the court was lifted, and that the appeal was heard by the full CCJ bench, comprising the Honourable President Mr. Justice Winston Anderson, the Honourable Justices Rajnauth Lee, Barrow, Jamadar, Ononayu, Eboe, Osuji, and Balkan. And it was also streamed on YouTube, which is linked on my podcast page. So at the bottom of the press release, it has a description of the CCJ, and I love how that description ends. It says, "The court is the realization of a vision of our ancestors, an expression of independence and a signal of the region's coming of age." Yes, it's Independence Day. And I'm going to leave you with my new independence poem that I wrote. Today, Jamaica is 64. There were many more years before. Our ancestors were African, brutally enslaved child, woman, and man. First the Spanish, then came the Brits. They did the same thing in St. Kitts. Barbados, Antigua, Bahamas, Trinidad, Dominica, St. Vincent, but ancestors get mad. Tacky and Nanny, enough skills they had. Revolt, fireborn, go on real bad. Paul Bogle, he gave his life. The Morant Bay Rebellion caused much needed strife. For Africans, freedom had to reign, but 1834 was not yet time to sing. Freedom was stolen for 4 years more. Apprenticeship used to con the poor. No money, housing, food, you know the score. So Sam Sharp light up the place. Christmas war. Fighting for justice, people suffering. Like in the words where King Bob Marley sing. His lyrics coming from the Emperor. And Marcus Garvey first hear about ya. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Up, you mighty race, you and me. What will this next year of independence bring? Will we finally get rid of the British king? Become a republic, close the colonial door? Surely it's owed to those who came before. As a reminder, if you're not registered to vote, September 30, 2026 is around the corner. And it's the deadline to register for the November 30, 2026 voters list. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Podcast Index, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Apple, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. if you want to reason about anything, or you can't find any of the material I was talking about, you can email me on melanie.atasteofja@gmail.com. That's MELANIE.ATASTEOFJA@gmail.com. Until next time, happy Independence Day. Thank you for supporting this podcast. Please subscribe, like, follow, and share it with friends and family. And again, I thank you for taking the time to listen. One love. Yes, the word is love.